Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today I'm very pleased. Joining me from the US, Kathryn Wang. She's the principal public sector at SandboxAQ. Kathryn, I'm very thrilled to have you with me here today. We're gonna discuss very important topics, and you work at that intersection of cybersecurity and AI and other things also as well. So I'm very happy you were able to join me here today. The way I like to do it is I keep it to my guests first to introduce themselves. So tell us a little more about your journey and what brought you later to Sandbox AQ, and then we can take the conversation from there. So the floor is yours.
Wonderful, Mehmet. Thank you so much. I am very honored to be here and kind of joining in for this great conversation. So, I started my career about 25 years ago at Google. So, we only had one product at the time in 2004 that made any money. So, as you kind of look throughout my career, my LinkedIn, you'll notice every 4 years or so, I seem to get what the American calls senioritis, right? So, you go to university and then but within the first 4 years, you grow, or you go through this process, and then you result like progressively more anxious and ready to go into the next thing. We call it senioritis when we're senior in university. So every 4 years of my career, I would switch to something different. And the typical uh, curve is essentially I would start with a big problem. I would build, I would scale, and then once it was mature, I would move on. So after four different iterations of the ads capability and then the enterprise product, a stint in product management, more on the strategy operations world, and then moving into the area 120 with the incubator, similar to like a Y Combinator of big problem, the cutting edge of technology that Google was funding. It was the kind of early instantiation of generative AI, conversational AI, etc., that inspired me to leave Google and really pursue more of a startup proper kind of lifestyle, if you will, and professional pursuit. So I moved into cybersecurity pretty quickly, knowing that there was going to be a huge threat landscape and a strong aperture for opportunity there. Started in application security and then quickly moved into Sandbox AQ. I've been there for almost 2 years now. And here I am the principal of our public sector division within the company that focuses primarily on quantum technology with an AI, very strong AI application to ensure real, current, global good.
Great, and thank you again, Kat, for being here with me today. So you work, you have a very rich background, I would say, and you've seen a lot of changes in this sector. So in your opinion, what fundamentally changes when AI systems moves from the research to production, especially in high stakes environments? I would say like the enterprise, or maybe government, banking, maybe even defense.
Sure. So there's so many schools of thought on this AI piece, and I'm trying not to, cover things that some other people who probably could say this much more eloquently have already covered. But the AI piece of it is just the same thing, but different day. The way people sometimes describe it as it is a tool. It is not necessarily a human. And the moment that we start to give it decision making power as if it truly possesses intelligence is when I think we have gotten a little bit too far outside of either the practical use cases for AI. Now, I'll give you an example. If you think about the typical progression of a human professional, you will grow through experience, you'll learn, you'll adapt, and you'll hopefully try continuously new things, but you'll constantly get a mentor element of it or a way of just guiding principles that you will always be able to fall back on, right? With AI, the governing principles, the data in which it is trained on, and sometimes I would say the fundamental spirit or the soul behind the AI is very much dependent on the country where it is trained, right? So the values that you would expect to see coming from a autocratic regimes versus a Western democracy are going to result in very different forms of AI. We need to be aware of that. That's very critical because as we think about the different AI that's being developed across many different nations, they're going to have very different political personalities. That's this also the reason why like we have to inherently understand how AI is built, how it is trained, the data that underpins it, and what function we're trying to have it to do. Okay, so let's progress. We've kind of talked about the recipe of what makes the AI like the way that it functions.
Hmm.
As we look at AI utilization across other countries, not just the United States, a very interesting trend emerges. Some of the developing countries have taken AI and chosen to utilize it to activate the professional capabilities of every single working individual within their country. They have taken AI to weaponize what they can do within their economic growth potential. What did primarily Western countries do? They took AI and used it as a layer to cut out entry level or reactive jobs. Right now,
Hmm.
on one hand, the operator in me understands that efficiency allows us to um, reduce the non high value work, right, with this automation layer, which is great. This is essentially what happened in the Industrial Revolution with machinery. However,
Right.
what we should have seen is a corresponding increase or reinvestment of that operational layer of our workforce into something that's higher functioning. That did not happen. Right, the biggest technology companies in the world used AI to cut jobs, not to upscale and create opportunities for that current layer and become like further more effective in their roles for the company. So, I mean, as you think about national security, as you think about economic growth, I mean, the two are highly synonymous. Synonymous, and I can explain that a little bit more. But as we think about AI and data utilization within enterprises or even within governments, I highly encourage anybody who has decision-making power to stop thinking about AI as purely a operational, like automated form of replacement for the workforce and an accelerator. Because if you are not careful, and I mean this in the general, like every country, if you are not careful and not fully appreciating what AI can do to activate and force and multiply your entire workforce, other countries will leapfrog you.
That's an eye opener, I would say, Catherine. And like this is really a good call out for decision makers to take at that aspect. Now, we know that because we're talking about AI, so some people they think it's the elephant in the room. Some people they think, oh, it's a discussion for another day. The AI risks, right? And I'm
Yeah.
talking here from cybersecurity perspective and data perspective. So a lot of people which I speak with, they tell me, yeah, we know it's real. While some other people they say it's a problem for another day, right? So yeah, let's see how this AI thing will evolve. And yeah, we know like bad actors are might be utilizing it, you weaponize it as you mentioned. What do you see, the most things that organizations are underestimating today when it comes to the AI risks?
I don't think they fully understand what we've unleashed here. We really don't. I don't fully understand it. I see things happening with AI being weaponized and carrying out massive cybercrime campaigns to the extent of the level of creativity that I cannot fathom. And sometimes I wish I was a better. I wish I didn't have a conscience, because if I was a cyber criminal, I'd have a lot more money in it, you know? um, but I will say this: like in 2004, right? We asked if AI could do the job. In 2026, or sorry, 2024, we asked if AI could do the job. In 2026, we're asking if we can survive the AI doing the job. Right? Security in the age of autonomous agents, it's not just about stopping AI anymore or like limiting AI. It's about building a digital framework that's strong enough to contain its brilliance. So a great example of this is I just saw a headline literally yesterday about OpenClaw basically bypassing your EDR, your uh, what was it? Your all of these other uh, fundamental cybersecurity platforms that are from a resilience standpoint. It bypassed it and didn't set off or trigger a single alert, right? Because when you give AI, agentic AI, the ability to execute, not just
Hmm.
build, create, but also execute, They have your credentials. You've authorized them to do these things. So not them. See, I have to be careful with my language. You've authorized it. It is not a human being. You've authorized it to do things on your behalf. Everything within it is perfectly acceptable. So if you have OpenClaw or any LLM for that matter, Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, Grok, anything that's authorized to scan your emails, anything is authorized to look at your calendar, all a cyber adversary would need to do is to like inject some malicious code into any one of those, hide it in the plain text so you couldn't visually see it, and then trust that your AI is going to carry out automated tasks and become essentially weaponized to carry out whatever nefarious cybercrime plan that they have orchestrated, all within the the authorization structure that you've already set. Right. So now we get into this world of we talked about shadow AT, but shadow AI.
Right.
The example that you've used is like, oh, we'll get to it. We know, or that's a problem for another day. That literally sounds like every example that I've heard of somebody going to the doctor and then saying, yeah, we're going to need you to eat better or else you're going to die. I know it's a problem for another day. But we know what the health requirements are for us to maintain sustainable like longevity in our physical bodies and our brain health. We know all these things, but yet people by nature choose not to follow them. Cybersecurity, unfortunately, is kind of falling into that same category. People know there are problems, but because they can't fathom all of the ways that AI can be weaponized, because we can't create enough guardrails to anticipate all the different ways that can be exploited. It's like decision paralysis, and people just don't try. But I do sincerely worry with the forceful injection of AI into all of our platforms. Why does my refrigerator need to be connected to the internet? What is my oven? Why do I want to create an opportunity for some adversary to come in and turn my oven into an incendiary device? Right? Um, Before we inject AI into what we do, we need to be asking ourselves, what exactly is it that we need it to do? What is it operating? What is the end goal? And then how do we treat it with the same zero trust principles that we've had for humans for this whole time by not allowing agentic AI to have like free reign over everything, but treat them as actual agents and individual agents will have a beginning and an end to what they're authorized to do. If we narrow the scope and have the agents working together with those guardrails, we lessen the damage or uh, the ripple effect, the blast radius of any type of weaponization.
There's a lot to uncover here with you, Catherine. Now, but before deep diving into that, I see there are like multiple angles of these gaps because you mentioned the agents, but we know that there's also some other risk factors, let me call them this way. Maybe there's a better wording for that, which is, the LLMs themselves. So we know, like, we saw also like LLM poisoning to extract data from there. We saw uh, MCP, which is for people who are not familiar, it's like the equivalent of APIs in the world of AI. So are we talking about now? And of course, there's the data risk, which is me. Let's say I work for a company, and I go and I feed any LLM without mentioning a specific one. I go and I feed it with private data, which I shouldn't, and I make this joke. I tell people like, no one can stop me. Actually, like this is matter of fact because I can take a picture,
Yeah.
and then the model is so good it can do the transcription, and then I can do it. So we have multiple gaps. What do you think is the priority here? Is it like securing the data itself? Is it like fixing the LLM problem, or is it fixing the integration better, or is it all of
Yeah.
the above?
So I'll tell you my personal experience, and I hope this
Sure.
helps for anybody who is currently in cyber or even thinking about moving into cyber. When I started my career in big tech, I worked in platforms, right? I worked at the highest level of the enterprise. And when I realized that so much of our digital identity sits on that layer and it's largely unprotected, not necessarily by like lapses in secured by design models, but just also by incessant persistent threats. I went into the application layer and was like, okay, app security, let's protect that platform. Then when I realized that there were more threats that required us to defend successfully every single time when cyber adversaries only needed to win once, it was like your gut. I can't, this horrible sinking feeling that I realized all of this cyber security layer, it's all important. You should have locks on your doors. You should have cameras in your house. You should have motion sensor lights around the perimeter. Those are all great. However, that doesn't mean that you can leave your jewels or your valuables just sitting on the table for anybody, because there are so many ways that adversaries can get in now that ultimately you're gonna get got. And if that happens, the only way that you lessen the impact is to make sure that they cannot decrypt your data. So a good example of this is when you look at the developing technology behind quantum computing. Everybody's worried about Q-Day. When we're working on the national security level, when we're working with the major banks in the world, those are the two primary areas where we have to worry about quantum computing. Because the first thing that adversaries, if it's not us, actually, even if it is us, and by us, I mean the United States, nations are going to go after the economic security, right? That monetary layer, including all the store now decrypt later assets that they've compiled over the last 70 years. And as a result, those entities understand how important it is to secure the data layer, the high value assets. However, what we're finding out is that you don't even need a quantum computer to exploit weak cryptography. So now you have this whole agentic AI layer that's coming in as another way of potential doing data exfiltration. You have this supply chain layer that could have Trojanized devices that are embedded directly within your military facilities or within your company offices. Like most small to medium sized businesses, they do not recover in 6 months after a breach. It is an existential issue if data gets exfiltrated and decrypted. God forbid it, they go down the ransomware path. So if everything ultimately goes to the data layer, my philosophy is secure the data layer, right? All these other things are important. When all else fails, the crypto cannot. Now, this is where we get back into the type of data. You've got your customer data, right,
Mm-hmm.
which could result in regulatory fines and other forms of substantial financial risk. That's that. You've got your economic risk, which is the exfiltration of your intellectual property. Now, we've seen the People's Republic of China, we've seen other nation state entities specifically go after the intellectual property wealth within the United States, right? What was it, 3 years ago, the director of CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and the director of the FBI, Christopher Rowe, both got on and testified that China has amassed more in intellectual property wealth from the United States than every other nation combined. So why, if I am another developing country, would I invest to build my own tech when I can just go steal it from somebody else? So you've got that middle component where the data that you're protecting is actually your intellectual property. Now we have the final and newest form of data, which is training data.
Mm-hmm.
It takes 0.1% of data, your total data pool, to poison AI data model, right? So when we think about the cyber threats from an AI perspective, I like to look at basically I don't know if you have heard of the CIA triad, right? You've got your
Yeah.
confidentiality, your integrity, and your availability. So
Yes.
if if you are using AI or if you are building AI, how do you keep your trade secret secret and prevent data leakage? That's a confidentiality piece of it. From the integrity standpoint, do you trust the AI that you're using? Or can your AI, that's your product, be trusted against prompt injection, against data poisoning, against data drift, right? Like there are instances where the data could drift in accuracy that have nothing to do with data poisoning. And then how are you validating the supply chain? We've heard about S bomb, heard about C bombs, and now we have AI bombs. Like, how are you justifying where the data is coming from so that you can reliably say this is trustworthy AI. And then, of course, the availability. We have backups for backups and backups for data. We have backups for, if AWS West or East goes down, where do we fail over to? We have backups for this. But if our entire operational layer is agentic AI built on top of one of the big AI platforms out there and it goes down, or they get a hit with an injunction saying that you're no longer allowed to use this because we have evidence suggesting that this AI model was trained off of unlicensed data. Think OpenAI being sued by Encyclopedia Britannica for $1.5 billion because they trained their models off of data that they did not license from Encyclopedia Britannica, right? Those types of models, if you cannot function because the AI platform that you're using is not operational, or your AI gets impacted by that and you cannot ship, it's the equivalent of a manufacturing plant that is shut down due to a cyber attack and cannot produce material. If it's not on the truck, it can't be sold, which means that money comes to a screeching halt. So these three different layers of data all come down to whether it be high value assets for data privacy, your intellectual property, or your AI functioning your entire, enterprise or national security layer. All of that is where I think the protection needs to live.
Right. Now, I gotta ask you something, Catherine, and this is based on personal experience, both as a practitioner, kind of someone in previous lives who work in IT department and in cybersecurity, and then later with vendors in that domain. Now, and it's something that came up in my podcast with guests who just maybe I didn't notice or I didn't want to notice. Let's say, as we say, like we've seen this movie before, is that the cybersecurity industry, some people they say it's kind of very active, right? So something happened, and then we came up with the concept of zero trust, and then we start to talk about secure by design when we build any system, and we've seen like layers were built on top of each other. So you just mentioned like and we know how things you know moved forward from just firewall, then oh we need antivirus on the endpoint, and then oh let's put EDRs, let's put this, let's put that, and it kept always like stacking all over the place. And now we have the AI. Do you think that secure by design in the AI world in practice is something that also kind of a bolt on security, or we need just to rethink the whole thing from scratch? And I'm sorry if I'm asking a little bit kind of a loaded question here, but really I think this is an important topic we need to discuss because you gave a lot of valid examples of how threat actors might leverage the data and
Yeah.
these AI systems and agents. And we start to see like also agents doing, as you mentioned, you gave the open claw thing. A couple of weeks ago, I had the conversation with Betsy Atkins, and I didn't know about the paper, or maybe I saw it and I missed it, where they gave the agents some access, and then they start to blackmail the employee there. I think it was from Anthropic, the study. So now, when we need to talk about secure by design in the age of AI, what does in practice that might look like?
Yeah. So we're going to get a little bit philosophical here. When you add the concept of intelligence, like if we think about true intelligence here and how that actually doesn't really apply in the world of AI, it's just many cases is you know, uh, it's machine learning on steroids with the ability to make sequential decisions based off of a large data set of that happening in previous examples. Um, like, how do you, when you are an employer, how do you know that the candidate that you're hiring is the right person? How do you know that there's a culture fit? How do you know that they're capable of doing what they say that they can do? How do you know that they're of same mind of judgment? How do you know that they can't be compromised? How do you like all of these questions are the same questions that we would be asking AI, right? So, from a development standpoint, if AI is only as good as the inputs that you provided, then um, responsible AI development actually becomes very important. It needs to be built on a set of foundations and principles. And this is why when I tell you, we have to fully understand where the AI that we are using is coming from, it will make different decisions and choices based off of how it's built. And it's very similar to how we raise our children. So
Yeah.
there is a framework for this. There really isn't. I think that's a part of the reason why people struggle with it. And it's happening so fast that we have gotten to the point, like the whole, I hate it when people say, just put a human in the middle, just prevent a human. Like the human's going to be able to determine whether or not they get to push the button. Okay. But we have officially hit the point where humans can no longer cognitively manage the amount of output coming from the AI. It can't. We can't. There's so much stuff. Like, have you ever had somebody come deliver you a final product and it's literally just copy and paste of AI stuff? This is all from AI. I'm like, if you didn't take the time to read it or to review it, why do you think that I have the time or desire to read it either? Um, and I see it in LinkedIn posts constantly. People don't even take the time to try and hide that it came from an LLM. How can I trust that this is actually your opinion as opposed to the other things? And I'll give you the trick. Anytime you see the word national security imperative, I not only know that it came from an LLM, I know which LLM it came from, right? So these LLMs, they all have these different personalities. Um, we just need to be very aware is we don't have a choice. Like if we're going to hire these employees, there's not a giant 300 candidate pool to review. It's four big ones and then a bunch of other ones that are struggling to get notoriety. Those are what we have to work with. So the way that those big companies are developing their AI becomes increasingly important. Now, when we talk about sovereignty, right? Sovereignty, and like if we're seeing a lot of great AI technologies and companies coming out of the Middle East, for example, there's a ton. There really is. Like I would highly recommend everybody watch the space on how AI development happens, not only in the Middle East area, but also in Asia Pacific, because those are it's three very distinct flavors of AI development. That is going to determine how we most effectively utilize AI in enterprises.
So now we can say we're moving toward a world where there's a sovereign AI stack, right? Now, if we think about the internet, and one of the things that the internet allowed to happen is this kind, what some people they call it. I'm like you, Catherine. Sometimes I go philosophical. It allowed this kind of globalization, like companies from all over the world they can through trade together. E-commerce is like the best use case of it. Now, when we talk about the AI, because of national security, and you work closely with companies and government entities in that space, when we think about the sovereign AI stack, how we can think about collaboration at the same time when it comes to because we need to build the sovereignty and the resiliency and make sure that you gave a great example about something like someone coming and stealing your IP and go and use it. So I want to collaborate, but at the same time I don't want to give my national secrets. So how that would look like from a AI stack perspective.
Yeah. So I think there are frameworks for this that exist already, especially in national security. So there are great ways to utilize the best of breed technologies to suit your purpose, even if that technology isn't sovereignly developed, right? You can insist on sovereign data centers, like in or a cloud access point. So you have to instantiate a server within our country, and that way we know that the data never leaves our country. There's that way. You can also put guardrails on what it is or isn't allowed to access, right? You can make one great use of some of the largest American LLMs without giving it access to any of your IP. Well, you'd have to really make sure that your employees understand, do not put any proprietary code into these LLMs because they are not, they're not authorized to have them. And there are other security like layers that can prevent you from doing that or mistakes from happening. So if you, as long as you know what you are comfortable with in terms of sharing um, your data, your IP with the technology that's available from other countries, there are ways that you just safeguard that. It's not perfect. There's always an inherent amount of risk, but one of the benefits of having like a data crypto like a data training bill of materials, right, is so that as you're evaluating this and you know what it was trained on or what code is being utilized as part of that powering the AI piece of it, will help to create that much more like credibility in you knowing what you're signing up for.
Right. You mentioned something interesting also in your previous answer about the human in the loop. And, we can argue the whole day and maybe for weeks and months about, yeah, do we need to keep someone we don't need? I agree with you because I tell people we humans by nature we like, and actually it was like was a discussion with another guest on previous episode. We like mediocrity. We are lazy by design. So
Yes.
if we have something like even if you put someone in the loop, probably yeah approve right. Like
Yep.
we've seen it all the time. I've been in the IT department and we used to put these guardrails and still someone would click on that button. You mentioned also about the human with the amount of information that we are seeing. I remind people of social engineering, and this is before the AI, like how you can fool someone. And like when someone used to tell me, "Yeah, we have the best security systems in the world. We have this." I said, "Yeah, but you have humans." And said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Easily, they would wait for the weekend, right? It's Friday night. Someone would call one of your employees and they will just tell them something that, oh, here's what's gonna happen. Give me your, this information or that information, right? Now, of course, things can go south, as we say, at any time because we can make mistakes. Now, from governance perspective, Catherine, and I know like this is a question that maybe in enterprise and in government entities and in defense industry, people would ask this question: if okay, we give the control to the AI system to make a critical decision, who is responsible? Is it the model, the developer, or is it the organization?
Yeah. So we're seeing this right now. I actually was in a fascinating conference, and I would encourage fight the urge to be lazy. Utilize AI as much as you can to create value and time where you ordinarily would be doing operational tasks, but do not reinvest, right? Just like I said earlier, reinvest in yourself and higher level thinking. Because if higher level thinking is where we come up with big problems that then we impair in combination with AI can solve. Um, so, a good example of how I think AI creates this really interesting vacuum for us is in the medical field. So
Mhm.
this one hits close to home because to your point, when I was at that cybersecurity conference, I was looking at a panel of lawyers, all lawyers, and they said there are four main categories where we see a lot of cyber lawsuits requiring our cyber attorney services, and one of them is like HIPAA, which is healthcare information privacy and protection. Um, it is like abuse, which is the AI told me to go kill myself, right? Or other forms of self harm. And what to your point, like who is liable? Is the developer, the AI, or is it us assuming the risk and using it? There's going to continue being a massive legal battle. And the way that the courts rule is basically what will set the precedence for who owns the responsibility. I think with the topical relevance of Anthropic, they are seeing the writing on the walls that if their technology was ultimately being used and the primary driver behind something uh, bad that happens to an individual as a result of usage, that they would most likely be found liable. Now, even if that isn't true, just think about it. How much money do they have? The courts and the lawyers are absolutely going to go after them. They've got a target painted on the back just by the factor of being, victims of their own success. So, um, while I believe that there is strong moral intent in responsible AI development from some of these entities, they also are forced to do that, knowing that they bear financial risk as a result. Now, let's take about this. Let's take it to the healthcare industry. When you have AI automatically scanning and looking at X-rays or medical charts, and then providing the doctor with a very quick assessment on what to do,
Mm-hmm.
two things happen. The doctor could take the AI's interpretation and allow it. In that case, who bears responsibility if something goes awry? Interesting question. Now,
Right.
the second component is the doctor can see the result from the AI and choose not to follow it. Who is liable in that case if something bad happens, if something goes awry? It becomes this fascinating, like it melts my brain just thinking about this because the doctors didn't have this before. So maybe AI will be able to look at like the larger, broader spectrum of data, help the doctor make a better assessment and save more lives. Because the doctor is not going to be able to retain all of that medical historical data, but they can easily reference it when it's all provided to them in an easy format. Um, but if a doctor's looking at all the results and doesn't feel like they can trust the AI's response, we don't have a comparison to know whether or not the doctor made the right call. Like the same thing could have potentially happened if he did or she did follow the AI's advice, but we can't know. So in that case, what happens there? So the whole landscape is going to change, and the concept of fault or liability is really going to be pushed um, and determined by how the courts rule on these very delicate matters.
Right. Kathryn, you work at SandboxAQ, and there's an intersection between AI, cyber, and quantum computing. We know that quantum is becoming kind of now not say mainstream, but there are a lot of advancements that are happening very recently. Do you think also, if I look at the cyber part of it, and all what we discussed today, do you think that will add another stack to the AI security, knowing that of course, like the main use case people, I think, they know about is what everyone discusses, the post quantum cryptography, and how we will be able to, but you just said, like, with agents actually we can do that today. But still, maybe if we think about from an infrastructure, and again the same pillars we discussed today, would we need another stack just for the quantum? Because when I read about quantum, and I try to understand like what the technical capability that this technology would allow us when it's like really fully utilized, it's kind of massive. But of course, like any other technology, and we keep repeating this on the show, good things always can be used by bad people. So what are like your general thoughts on this?
Well, and I do mean that I didn't fall into post quantum cryptographic resilience. I chose it after going through that thought process before, right? Like enterprise layer, application security layer, data layer.
Yes.
It just made sense. So I say this truly believing it. The post quantum threat is something we really need to be prepared for. The banks have already leaned in, national security entities are already leaned in, policymakers within the government, from at least the ones that I've been speaking to, which include the Five Eyes, are already leaned in. Where I need to see more um, proactive initiative and funding is in healthcare and in critical infrastructure, right? So if we're talking about superpowers that want to exercise their dominance with the quantum capabilities, the best way that they're going to do that is completely redefine the way that cyber warfare works right now. And they're going to go after our critical infrastructure, our sensitive medical data, our economic security, and our national security. That's where it's going to happen. So I would love to see every nation hunker down, take that seriously, and make sure that they're securing the data layer. Now, the quantum technology piece of it is interesting because um, when you have things like quantum simulation, which is what something that the Sandbox focuses heavily on, we're working with several entities out in the UAE and the Middle East in general, trying to support their research with energy development. So, like, if you think we talked about sovereign AI development and also economic security when it comes to intellectual property, but I want to also acknowledge one very big difference. The United States has been driving a lot of innovation over the last 50 years. However, the other rising developing countries that are building AI capabilities and tech capabilities, especially on the Middle East and in other parts of APAC and France, etc., like it's okay as well. What they're doing is building on a foundation that has no technical debt. So if we think about how much energy it takes to power AI, it's stupid. It's very high. You cannot build data centers fast enough, right? We do not have enough
Right.
power. The United States' power grid is going to buckle under the amount of demand that's coming from the AI piece. Now, the reason why that also is a substantial amount of that compute capability or power is going to support tech debt, right, from 50 years of development that need to be optimized because those legacy systems and platforms in the code have never been designed to be hooked up to AI. So they're highly inefficient. We're using more power than we need to. But some of these other countries that are utilizing it efficiently from the ground up because they don't have a lot of tech debt, don't have a lot of fat to trim, can potentially do more with less amount of power. So as we think about quantum capabilities and technology, finding ways to use do more with less power, more efficient power generation, alternative forms of power storage, and heat safe forms of energy storage aside from lithium, right? All of these quantum simulation capabilities. Oh, the ability to do drug simulation to cure diseases, right?
Mhm.
That don't have enough data to produce results for clinical trials. Those are all things that quantum technologies are very poised to do from a massive like computation standpoint. So that's why even if you think about all that cool futuristic stuff that we can do, you're generating IP. IP is data. Data is vulnerable. It needs to be secured. So that's why I keep coming down to the data layer.
100% agree with you, Catherine. And, to your point, I'm happy that, at least, I can talk about the UAE and the Middle East in general because I'm based in Dubai. So, um, they're kind of forward thinking in this. So, recently they have released their imperative, not initiative, imperative for all government organizations to, you know, seek solutions for post quantum
Yeah.
cryptography issue. There are like similar also national initiatives when it comes to the data risks and like how they can tackle these risks, whether it's in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, and other part of what we call the developing economies, which is good. It's very stunning to hear from you, and I think this is what I take away is like it's a good time to build fresh because you have, as you said, like you would have the legacies in some other places. So here you can build fresh, and I think at least I can say the UAE doing this very well because it's like a still new, everything is fresh. So they are leveraging this. And the last thing which you mentioned, and I want to repeat this two times, IP is data and data must be secured. So IP is data. So a lot of people they forget about it. You need to protect this. This is your your crown jewels, I would say. And data we use, I work in cybersecurity, part of the cyber resilience, like backup recovery and all this. We used to tell people, guys, your data is your crown jewels. Like it's the last thing that you need someone to go and steal it, right? So it's your everything. So I'm happy, Catherine, you highlighted this. As we come at the end of this fantastic episode today, final thing I ask all my guests: any final thoughts and where people can learn more?
Oh, okay. So I am a huge, I do think that doing professional certification courses are helpful. However, I'm also mindful that there's so much great content out there that's free. There's no need for you to go and pay for that if you can, get a strong foundational understanding. So the two things I would say is utilize LinkedIn. I continue to be impressed with the amount of content that is being shared around from their LinkedIn learning tracks, especially within AI, especially the world of um like everything related to AI and cybersecurity, and then all of these other kind of ancillary side things, cryptography, crypto stuff, cryptocurrency, like everything that funnels into what we consider the digital ecosystem or digital economy. They have great resources. Check that out. There's also really great resources within YouTube, people who explain things with high level of fidelity and production value, imagery, like drawing, light board capabilities, and they explain it in a very digestible way. There are also great tools out there. I'm a fan of Notebook LM, being able to
My
listen,
favorite.
turn complex concepts into funny, engaging um, podcast. So my trick, and anybody who has seen this movie, there's an American movie that's just lighthearted and very stupid, but I enjoy this level of humor sometimes because cyber is stressful. Is there's a movie with Will Ferrell called Step Brothers. So sometimes I will ask them to create a podcast similar to that movie with a lot of humor to help explain certain concepts to me. So
Wow.
I have a higher likelihood of retweeting it because I know it's funny and it's memorable. And then the last thing is a little bonus for everybody. Um, I try to ask everybody that I talk to. One of the things that I work in the conversation, like, tell me how you're using AI. That's like a super AI hack. Tell me how you're using it. Because then one person's learning becomes everybody else's. I started my conversation with a friend yesterday, like, how are you using AI? She was telling me how she was use Claude Code to create a CRM for herself, for her business. I was talking to another friend. We were stuck in the DCA airport due to air traffic control for 5 hours, and we went into a hole on how he's using AI. Um, I have found a wonderful love, like love relationship with Banana Pro AI. It has completely changed the way that I generate imagery for my presentations, my panels, my keynotes, like everything. The fidelity and the ability to make minor modifications off of an existing image is next level. It makes ChatGPT look like a waste of time, to put it nicely. So I love bananaproai.com. That's the one. There's a lot of banana, like
Yes.
banana replicas out there that are not as good. Bananaproai.com is great. So learn from each other how you're using AI. Use it as an excuse to connect with people, right? Because that's something that you can do as a human being that AI
Right.
cannot. Um, and then we just share those best practices and you know keep yourself challenged. Don't fall prey to the laziness.
Yeah. Any place where you share anything online, Catherine Pepe maybe can go and follow you maybe?
LinkedIn, I have a lot on there, and I try to my network. I'm very blessed. Is all over the place, and I think everything from the medical industry to the energy industry, a lot to national security and cybersecurity technology. I try to distill certain concepts into very easily digestible, um, like read it. I don't write paragraphs. I write like maybe three sentences and then something funny in the end. And it's usually pretty spicy and memorable. And then I hyperlink it to a article that it's about. So LinkedIn is a great place to find me.
Great. I will make sure that I will put the link to the profile. And by the way, this is my favorite writing style, and I like to read things like this. Like when I see something with, like 2 pages to read, I don't read that
Yeah,
honestly.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so this is the right way to do it. Well, Catherine, really, I enjoyed the conversation today. That was really, 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 very eye-opening, and I hope the audience will benefit out of it. And again, I appreciate the time. I know you were like between travels, so you took the time to speak with me. It's early for you also in the morning, and this is how usually I end my episodes. This is for the audience. If you are new here, thank you for passing by. I really appreciate it. Give me a favor and subscribe, share it with your friends and colleagues. If you are one of the people who keep coming again and again, and I know I repeat myself at the end of every episode, since beginning of 2025 last year, you did something fantastic. I don't know how I managed to do it, but we are keep seeing the podcast trending in the Apple top 200 podcast charts across multiple countries in the business, sometime entrepreneurship, category. Now, this doesn't happen by itself. This is because of you, because you listen, you come back. And the nice thing is we see the countries list, updated all the time. So I'm happy for this. And at least we see 4 to 5 countries simultaneously. I can't thank everyone enough for recommending, and I see the messages coming to me that they listen to the podcast because someone referred. Sometime I don't know who. So thank you all for the support, and thank you for being part of this, because what we're trying to do is to spread knowledge and make sure that, to Catherine's point, we explain things in a way that people can digest it. It's not like just throwing technology for the sake of technology. So thank you very much. And as I say always, stay tuned for a new episode very soon. Thank you. Bye bye.